Good evening and welcome to the 2014 Houghton County Candidates Forum on Children's Issues. My name is Germain and I will be your moderator this evening. The forum tonight is sponsored by the Copper Country Human Services Coordinating Body, Copper Country Great Start Collaborative, Superior Child Abuse Prevention Council, and the League of Women Voters of the Copper Country. We would like to thank the Hancock Public Schools for the use of the middle school auditorium, and a special thanks to our audience for your participation. We also want to thank Bill Fink for videotaping tonight's forum. It will be available on the League's website, www.lwvccmi.org. I want to remind all of you to turn your cell phones either on vibrate or off. And also, we're going to be combining the first two sections, the state representative and the state senate offices tonight. And so that will get us all out about a half an hour early. So the first portion of tonight's forum will focus on the race for the 38th District Michigan State Senate and the 110th District Michigan State Representative. That will be followed by Districts 1 and District 3 of the Houghton County Commission candidates. If you have questions during the forum, we ask that you write them on the 3x5 cards that are provided. I also ask that you send up questions only for the candidates that are currently fielding questions. Please clearly print the questions. That would be very much appreciated. There are pages. If you'll raise your hands, please. The pages are in the back of the room, are available to give you a card or to pick up your questions. So if you'll raise your hand, if you would like to write a question, and let them know, they'll collect them and bring them up to the front. I also ask audience members to be respectful of the candidates and restrain from clapping, booing, commenting, or making other signs of support or lack of support for the candidates during this evening's forum. Candidates are asked to respond only to the questions asked by the moderator. You are free, however, to address any appropriate issues during your opening and closing statements. So I want to welcome our candidates for the 38th District Michigan Senate, Tom Casperson and Christopher Germain. Also, there are two candidates running for the 110th District Michigan State Representative, Scott Dianda and Bob Michaels. Mr. Michaels has declined our invitation to participate this evening in the forum, and that's why we're combining the two offices together. So candidates, if you'll refer to the timers in the front row, I guess they're not in the front row, they're 3 rows back, who will show you how much time you have remaining by holding up cards. They have a card for 30 seconds, and a card for 15 seconds, and then a red stop sign will be raised when your 60 seconds are up. This segment will end with the candidates giving a 1-minute closing statement. So the opening statements will be presented by candidates in alphabetical order by office. So Mr. Casperson, welcome. You have the floor for the 1 minute beginning now. Nope, just flip the switch up. There. Takes it.
Can you hear me okay? There we go. Wow.
Yeah, you're loud.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out. It's a little wet outside, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out to hear what we have to say tonight and maybe ask us some questions. I am running for the 38th Senate District. I want to thank you for the opportunity I've had over the last 4 years to represent you as your senator. We've been moving forward on a lot of tough issues. We've had some tough issues we've faced, and there's been quite a turnaround, in my opinion, in the state of Michigan, comparatively speaking, where we were. And I'm excited to be a part of that, and that's one of the reasons I'm running again to work and serve in the Senate capacity. And I'd like to keep the momentum of what we've got going. And the opportunities for jobs, the growth up here in the Upper Peninsula, the opportunities are definitely there, and I'd like to keep that momentum going with those opportunities. So thank you, and look forward to the conversation tonight.
Okay, Mr. Germain, you have the floor for 1 minute starting now.
Good evening, folks. I'm Christopher Germain. I'm also running for the State Senate seat in District 38. To give you just a little quick part of my background in case you don't know who I am. I am a realtor down in Delta County. I've been doing that for just over a decade. I'm the president of the Upper Peninsula Association of Realtors Incorporated, which is headquartered in Marquette. And I'm also a fire captain with the Fort River Fire Department, which is just south of Escanaba. I've been deeply involved in my community, and that's basically why I decided to get into this race. I see it as a next step to community service for the area that's given me so much. I was born and raised in Escanaba, and just always been there working on issues that I felt were important to my community, trying to help with events in there. And now I'm asking for that opportunity to do that on the state level, because I feel through state service is a great way to give back to your community. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dianda, you have the floor for 1 minute, beginning now.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Dianda. I'm the state representative for the 110th House District seat, and I appreciate everybody coming out tonight on this wet night. And we're just glad that it's not a white night tonight. So I just want to say that it's been a pleasure serving the people of the 110th House District seat for the last year for this term, and I look forward to serving you again.
Thank you. That concludes the opening statements. We'll now proceed with questions submitted from the audience. So we'll start with the first question, Mr. Casperson. The test scores of Michigan students, once among the highest in the country, have dropped, making Michigan one of the lowest achieving states. What measures would you support to improve educational results?
Well, I think looking at when we look at the standards, I think we need to look at what's potentially causing it. And when you find pockets in the state, Southeast Michigan comes to mind, where we've had a lot of turmoil, a lot of problems, and a lot of situations that are affecting our schools, and there's a large number of kids there. Many of those problems are not completely related, I don't believe, to the schools. There's been some social problems in those areas, so when we take those numbers into account, I hope that's factored in. I would hope that we can get to a point where we talk about education, especially when it comes to the young kids and with problems like that we have an honest dialogue about some of the causes behind it. There's been a lot of talk in the last few weeks about the money side of it, the financial, certainly that's part of it, but I think there's many other things that are involved right now with education that needs a dialogue and a discussion and some solutions, so hopefully we can get to that point.
Okay, Mr. Germain, would you like the question repeated?
Sure.
Okay, the test scores of Michigan students, once among the highest in the country, have dropped, making Michigan one of the lowest achieving states. What measures would you support to improve educational results?
This is a lot to cover in 1 minute time, so I'll try to do my best. There's a couple different ideas that I have with education. I think obviously we need to start shoring up the funding, and we've had this discussion like Senator Casperson mentioned over the last few days. Education funding needs to be shored up. I believe that we need to fully fund technical and vocational classes to make another path, a hands-on path for people that aren't going to be going necessarily the college route. I think that's going to make our schools a little bit more innovative. I think we need to get the students engaged, but also the parents engaged. There was a time where if I got a bad score, it was on me. And now a lot of times they go back to the teacher and they blame the teacher for that bad score. So I believe that if we can get our students engaged in a more innovative classroom setting, we can shore up that funding and we can get the parents involved, that will start getting on a better track, along with a lot of other things that I'm sure we'll be discussing tonight.
Mr. Dianda, would you like the question repeated?
No, that's all right, ma'am. Thank you. I think that number one is it's an issue with the funding. We got to make sure that we have adequate funding to run the schools is the number one issue. The second point is to make sure that we have local control over all of our situations in these school districts. That's number one. I mean, we talked about this many times in the last couple of weeks, just going around the UP. I think it's so crucial that we make sure that the local school board and the local administration and the teachers, the parents, along with the students, figure out what they need to succeed. Because we don't need people making decisions in Lansing that are going to cover a lot of our issues up here where we're doing things right. Because we are doing things right. I've got 24 school districts that I have in the 110th district, visit them all many times throughout this last 2 years, and we are successful. the UP is doing things right, and I don't think that we should model a lot of what we're trying to do across the state to affect us in the UP where we are doing things right. Just because we have 3 to 4 school districts in failure in Lower Michigan. So, thank you.
Okay, with the second question, we'll start with Mr. Germain. Describe your life experience with youth programs and how they may have impacted you and the decisions you will make if elected.
When we look at youth programs, as I mentioned, I'm deeply involved in the community, and this is through a lot of organizations. I've done High Five mentoring, stuff through Big Brothers Big Sisters, Delta County JCs, Delta County Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons. All these organizations work with children's issues, and we've seen some of the sides of what's happening in the classroom, let alone what's happening in a child's life. One of the biggest things that I think we've talked about over the last couple days is mental health services and recognizing issues at the school level. If we train our staff to be able to recognize problems at an early childhood age and having those services available to work with that issue after that. That's one of the many things. Again, the funding, a teacher shouldn't be having to buy school supplies to bring into a school, into their classroom. We should be funding that as a state. It shouldn't be left up to an individual. So those are just a couple of the issues, and I'm getting the stop sign, so I'll stop there.
I'll just let you guys pass the mic. If you need the question repeated, just let me know,
Sure.
okay?
Thank you. I didn't know if it was,
I know.
I'm thrown in the mix with the senators here. Thank you. I just wanted to say this, is that I was also the past president of Local 5 ASCII. I was a statewide president of a labor organization, and we prided ourselves in being able to look at the future and bringing in the youth and having them trained and looking at technical equipment to look at. Vocational training was our big thing. So I mean, that was something that really gave me a good insight on where we need to go. 7, 8 years later in this position now, now we're really trying to craft vocational training to get it back into the K through 12 school system so we can just have jobs available for younger people when they come out. A lot of industry we meet with now, they're definitely saying that we need more of a skilled labor workforce across this district. We're trying to get it to the point where these kids are identified at a young age, they're trained, and they're able to stay here and live and build a wonderful life.
Yeah, could you repeat it, please?
Sure. Describe your life experiences with youth programs and how they may have impacted you and the decisions you will make if elected.
Sure. I probably need to go back a little bit. I think I'm probably the oldest guy on the panel up here. I don't think I'm that old. I'm 55 years old. But my upbringing was a little bit different than what we see traditionally probably today. I grew up in my mother just recently moved out of the home that I grew up in. My dad built the home in 1957. I grew up in that home, and it's still in the family. My sister bought it. But that neighborhood where I grew up, we didn't have what we see today as programs and children's programs type things. It was more of a neighborhood togetherness, and all the neighbor kids that I grew up with, we did everything together growing up. We were like a neighborhood family. And that was kind of my background coming through. So some of it has become new. My children have gone through some of the Head Start programs, and they've been good for the kids. But my own personal experience was really the opposite. It wasn't many programs, and it was more of a neighborhood-driven thing with families and the neighborhood kids playing and participating in activities together.
Okay, we'll start the third question with Mr. Dianda. There are 2 opposing commercials for the governor's race in which one group states that the current governor has decreased education spending by $1 billion and another that states that the current governor has increased education spending by $1 billion. What do you feel is a true representation of what has happened with education spending during the last 4 years, and why?
Well, there definitely was stimulus money that was placed into the state through the federal program. And what has happened is that was taken out of our state budget. So there was a big reduction in that amount of money. The other thing about the commercials that I feel are kind of false is on both ends of those commercials that we have a fact that, before, a year and a half ago, about $575 was taken out per head. And then we also started putting the money back into the programs. But we never really truly got back to where we needed to be with the funding levels. And we're still working on the funding levels of 1992 for a lot of these school districts. So as things have increased in our costs throughout all these districts, our electricity, our cost of doing business to run in the districts, we're really never truly at the point we need to be. So I do think that, you know, there was a reduction, there was money put back into the system, but I don't think we're at where we need to be as far as the line levels.
Mr. Casperson.
Thank you. Yeah, I answered it this morning. I'll do the same thing. It's my opinion. I'll give you the political answer real quick. The political answer would be President Obama cut our educational system. He's the one that gave us the stimulus money, and that was roughly $470 per student. In 2010, he took it away. That's the political answer. The real answer is he gave us the stimulus money, and he was straight with it and said it's a one-time money. But unfortunately, we enrolled that money into the school system as actual operational money. So then 2010 came, and there's no more federal money, and we were faced with that money now gone and a $1.4 billion deficit, and we had to find a way to plug these holes and get the state back and rebounded. That's where that money, the biggest part of the lion's share of that deficit came from. And where we've been at is the state level funding was there and now has been increased up to this point. But if you want to talk about the stimulus money, yes, that was gone.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I just wasn't sure if you did. And again, I think it's a little bit of both. We know that the education system was cut, and we saw that in 2010 when the headlines ran saying that there were cuts being made to the education system then. We did replace some of that money, but some of that money did not go directly into public education. Some of it went to technology upgrades, some of it went to for-profit charter schools. So when we replaced money, it didn't necessarily go back into a public school classroom. And let me be clear, I have no problem with charter schools. I have one in my own backyard, the Hannahville Indian Community. They're able to teach cultural classes and certain things that you can't do in a public school there. They are not a for-profit charter school though. There was a different regulation when they became charter schools than what we have today as charter schools. And a lot of that money that we replaced, or this $1 billion that's being talked about, that's being put into education, went to various places, but not necessarily just public schools.